vlog number 127. It occurred to me that I had not ever, I don't think, introduced a vlog from the roof of the Peppermill parking garage. I know I've done it from the roof of the Wynn parking garage and also Harrah's, I think, on the last trip, which, by the way, I am jonesing to go back to Vegas. And yeah, part of it was just due to how well things went for me last time, but damn it, I just love me some Las Vegas. And I always want to go on another trip. I'll probably go when we get into hockey season so I can catch a Golden Knights game and play some cash games down there as well. But once again, here in a smoky Reno, Nevada, we're going to play some $0, $5 cash game at Peppermill. The games have just been insanely good of late, and there's a couple of them going here on this Thursday evening. We'll try to get to some viewer comments coming up at the end of the vlog, but first, let's jump in here and see how things go. I showed up not planning on playing a long session, as I had work the following Friday morning, and once I noticed that there were 3 local pros in the 2 games and a young couple who travel around together to grind 14 plus hours a day of live poker, I just didn't love it. So I immediately realized it was not an ideal day, but there was a VIP in seat 5, and I got into seat 6 on table 2. Not the ideal position for vlogging, but I decided to stay in that seat given my ideal position for, well, winning money in the game. So I sit down only to watch Reno Grinder, a.k.a. Adam, immediately raise with the skinny and flop a straight. It's all skill. Took me a while to get a playable hand, but when I did, I picked up ace-king of clubs and 3-bet to 55. The original raiser folded, but a field caller came along. I check a 9-9-6 one-club flop, but my bet on a 10 of clubs turn takes the pot down. Then I 3-bet ace-king to 75, and Reno Grinder calls. A young guy in the button 4-bets to 245. Usually with ace-king here, I'm either going to miss, not get paid off when I hit, or hit and still be no good. There's one really good player I know who always buys in 200, and I think the main reason is so he can just always get it in with ace-king pre-flop and never have to worry about what he's going to do. But playing 200 big blinds deep, it's just not that easy. So with that in mind, I fold the hand and simply go on to the next one. Then I open up queen 10 of clubs under the gun, and it folds around to a VIP in the big blind who calls. So with 30 in, we get a slightly above average flop of 8-9 jack rainbow. He bets out into me for 25. And I've seen this before where he'll 3-bet flops that he has draws on. So I try to induce that with a min raise. Doesn't work. As he doesn't raise, he just calls. So with 130 in, the turn is a 10, and he checks. I bet 75, and he makes the call. So with 280 in, the river is a 6, and again he checks. Now I hate betting too much in spots like this. It's just kind of a face-up spot. Very difficult to get paid off with one-liners on the board. So I down bet to 85. He does think about it for quite a while, but ultimately folds, claiming that he had top 2 pair, which I do actually believe. I then flop a combo draw, but end up folding to a big bet on the turn against a tough older gentleman who changes tables about as often as he plays a pot, so you've got to give him a lot of credit when he does end up betting big. Then we get a $15 raise from up front and a call from middle position. I have pocket kings in the hijack and 3-bet to 55. The big blind, as you can see, despite the unfortunate seat 6 filming location, 4-bets to 180. Now this guy's a very tough player who watches the vlog and rarely 4-bets at all. I elect to proceed with caution here. So with 390 in, the flop is 6 high, all hearts. He then proceeds to do exactly what I would do if I was in his spot and had aces. He bets small to keep in the hands that he obviously dominates, making it 150. Now, I obviously know that if I hit a heart, I'm going to have to go broke. But I wasn't exactly sure what to do if I didn't. That said, I make the call. So with 690 in, the turn is an offsuit 8, and now he puts me all in for my last $325. Now, if he were value betting queens in this spot, he would have to assume that I'm willing to call him with jacks. And if you take it a level further, it would mean that he would think that I would call with them, meaning that I'd then be putting him on either tens or ace-king. Seemed like a tough ask. And as I mentioned, this guy rarely ever 4-bets, so I just was completely convinced that he had aces, and obviously a good chance that he has aces with the ace of hearts. And I'm just going to be honest with you guys. I really, as I mentioned, kind of hated these lineups from the get-go. And I hate going broke in bad games. It's okay in good games, but I hate going broke in bad games, so I fold the hand. The guy on my left is another local pro, and he was absolutely stunned because I kind of flashed in the 2 kings when I folded. More on him in a minute. But right after I lost that hand, another pro sits down in the game. This guy doesn't play in Reno all that often, but he plays a decent amount, and when he's here, he's one of the best you'll see. So, losing with pocket kings, seeing another pro sit in the game, I was just pissed off. So rather than deal with the lineup consisting of 3 guys who make their living at poker, 2 guys who are really tough to beat, and an 80-year-old bum-hunting table changer, I decide to take the road less traveled. I get the hell out of there, booking a loss and making the trip home before the clock even strikes 7. And as I was driving home, I got this text from the aforementioned guy on my left who knew I folded the kings. Whether it's true or not, you'll have to decide for yourself, but I believe it. All right, I am home much earlier than I would like to be. As you can see behind me, it's still light outside. That doesn't happen often when I get home from a poker game, but it's just one of those days that nothing was going right. And one of the lessons I've learned over the years of watching videos and listening to podcasts on CrushLifePoker.com is that one of the biggest mistakes that so many people make is they extend their losing sessions and they wrap up their winning sessions, when in fact the opposite should be the way you do it. It's kind of like the way that recreational gamblers will play. Meaning, everyone loves the idea of going and putting $2 on a Powerball ticket because you only have to risk $2. And yet, when it comes to gambling, and obviously this is really the case in poker, I can't really speak to other forms, but the way to win money is to do the opposite of the lottery technique, meaning you have to put a lot of money in play to win a little. That's what winning poker players do, as you guys know. You buy in for $1,000, you play for 6 hours, and more often than not, you cash out for $1,276. That's not sexy, but that's the way to win. And the same thing applies when you're getting crushed, you're losing. You should wrap it up. And when you're winning and you have a winning image, that's when you should stay longer. And that was kind of what I was looking at today. I hated the fact that the game was obviously terrible. That's really the main reason I left. But I also have a losing image, meaning none of my bluffs are going to work. I'm going to get called down extremely light. I have to make big hands, and I got to get them to hold up. And it's going to be tough. And I just kind of thought of it in the sense of, well, I got work tomorrow, plus I would much rather watch my San Francisco Giants, who were crushing it, and I'd much rather watch this Field of Dreams game that's going on between the Yankees and the White Sox, which, by the way, is there a better movie out there?
Cobb wanted to play. None of us could stand the son of a bitch when we were alive, so told him to stick it.
I mean, I just love that movie, Field of Dreams. And I just hope that in, 7 years from now or so, that I'm going to be able to have a catch with my dad and my son. 3 generations of Deeches, all 35 years apart from one another. And the 3 of us can have a catch. I'm holding out hope that that will happen. And I think it will. All right, recording this about 20 hours after the last segment that you watched, and I'm going to head back over to Peppermill and hope that it's not as much of a shark-infested situation as we saw yesterday, because took a pretty significant loss there, some work to do, and hopefully some more hands to vlog. So I show up Friday at 5 to find 3 games going on. None are great, but none are terrible. And after a short wait, I get in. By the way, whenever you're first on the list for like an hour, it seems like the minute you sit down, 3 guys always leave. Anyway, I'm in for a 1500 on table 2. First hand folds all the way to the button when I'm in the big blind. He's more concerned about his horse bets than the poker game. But in this case, he raises a 10, and I look down at ace-queen and 3-bet to 35. He calls. So with 70 in, it comes 6-6-4 rainbow. I bet out for 35, thinking that he's probably not folding any hands that beat me, but I could use some protection against the ones that don't. He calls. And with 140 in, the turn is an ace. Now I figure it's going to be tough to get called by a weaker hand. So for the third straight time, I bet 35, hoping he'd get stubborn with a hand like 4-5. Instead he mucks, goes back to his horse bets, and we take it down. Then an aggressive Asian guy opens from +1, and I look down at queen 10 of diamonds in the hijack and make it 85. He calls. So with 175 in, the flop is jack 10-8 rainbow. He checks, and I check for pot control, but I'm certainly not planning on folding many turns. The turn is a 10, giving me trips, and now he comes out betting. He makes it 120. Knowing just how aggressive this guy is, I want to get a river bet out of him as well, so I just call. And with 415 in, the river's a 9, so I improve to a straight, but will he bet? Answer, yes. He fires $375. I don't see much of a point in raising on a paired board. I toss in the chips, so we have an $1,165 pot, and he shows 4-5 for 5 high. Then I open to 30 with ace-king offsuit, and immediately get 3-bet by the female half of that couple I mentioned with a combined age of probably around 44. I like both of them, but I do wish they'd get the hell out of town. She's also watching a vlog between hands. I have no idea if she knows who I am or how that would impact things if she did, but either way, she makes it 115. I call. And with 235 in, the flop comes ace-8-9, 2 clubs. Now it's important to point out that against good players, I will often make weird bets for weird sizes in weird spots, and this is an example of that. I decide to donk lead for 30 here, and she calls. The turn is an offsuit jack. Sticking with the weird line theory, I now decide to check, figuring that she'll either bet or I'll get paid off on the end. She checks back, and the river is a 5. I put in a $100 chip, and she calls. I show my hand, and she mucks. Stop me if you've heard this before. A very attractive VIP sits down in the game. This time she buys in for $1,500. First hand against her comes when she makes it 45 from the hijack, and I have 10s in the big blind and make the call. So with 90 in, it comes queen 4-4 rainbow. She only bets 35, which I thought was a little odd here, but I make the call nonetheless. So with 160 in, the turn is 9, and again I check. This time she bets 100. I'm not folding here either. So with 360 in, the river is a 6, and I check again. She checks back and wins with queen jack offsuit. So I lose that hand, but my San Francisco Giants keep winning. What an amazing year it's been for them. Then the serial table changer gets involved in a hand. He actually tried to table change to table 5, but when he saw that the seat that had come open was the spot in the game, he elected to cash out instead, and then less than an hour later, he is somehow back in my game on table 2. And I can't say I loved that. Anyway, under the gun limps, and I have ace-4 of hearts +1, and overlimp, as does this guy I'm talking about in the hijack. With 20 in, the flop comes queen 8-9, 2 hearts. I bet out for $25 with my nut flush draw, and this guy in the hijack calls. So with 70 in, the turn is an offsuit 4. I bet $75 here, and the hijack makes it $225. Now we're playing 1,500 effective, and I'm certainly not going to throw the nut flush draw away for that price. With 520 in, the river is a beautiful 5 of hearts. I figure the most likely hand that he has here is jack 10, so I bet accordingly. I make it 400. I would have overbet if I thought he's going to have a flush a lot here. I just didn't see him raising non-nut flush draws on the turn, but I could be wrong. So I make the $400 bet. He snap calls. So we take down a $1,320 pot. And based on the speed of that call, I certainly can't rule out him having a flush, but I did not see to verify. I figure I'm going to be here late given this VIP in the game, so I decided to channel my inner OMC. Even though the official drink of the OMC is not coffee, it's Pellegrino. Anyway, we get a straddle in the VIP calls. I squeeze to 60 with king jack of spades, and she calls. So with 135 in, the flop is Jack 8-3 with 2 spades. Massive flop for me, especially against a player like her. I bet 25, and she check raises to 100. I thought about just re-raising right now, but I don't. So with 335 in, the turn is a brick, the 4 of hearts, and she bets 300. Now I'm starting to worry, but obviously I'm not doing anything but call here. With 935 in, the river is another brick, the deuce of diamonds. She bets another 300, which I gotta say, is a pretty good bet size, as if she knew what I had. If you've watched vlog 125, and it was probably the best vlog that's been done on my channel, you can see why folding here is still difficult, despite the fact that I did not improve my hand, despite a million opportunities to do so. I do toss in the chips, giving us a $1,535 pot, and she shows pocket eights. For a flopped set, she shot me with my own gun. That would have been really interesting if a spade ended up hitting on the river there. So it had been a good day, but we're back to square one. Then we get 2 more hands. And I feel obligated to explain to you, my loyal vlogging audience, as to why I don't have video. It's all because my phone somehow got filled up. And I'm not talking about video. It got filled up with literally nothing. When you go to the other section on iPhone storage, it said there was 55 gigabytes of something. And it was literally just crap. So I had to restore the entire phone. Anyway, I ran out of space. That's why I couldn't roll any video of these last couple hands that obviously defined the night for me. And I'm just going to sum up this first one. After squeezing preflop with king-queen offsuit and flopping top pair, I was able to get $650 worth of value with my pair of queens against this aforementioned aggressive Asian dude. The problem was, well, a heart hit the river. It ended up giving him the nut flush. And he bet 300 into 1,300. For that price, I paid him off. He actually made a really good bet sizing. And his nut flush ends up taking the pot down. It really did not work out great for me. Or at least I'd say I'd much rather flip-flop in terms of the guy who made the nut flush against me and the guy who I made the nut flush against. Even though I got paid off somehow, I'd still rather flip those two around. So I went from being up hundreds to down hundreds. And despite the VIP being in the game, it was not nearly as good as it was 2 vlogs ago. And then you'll have to settle for a picture on the last hand. But after I 3-bet pre-flop with pocket queens, she led into me for 200 on an 8-9-10 2-heart board. I don't see how I can do anything but jam here. I had about 600 left in my stack. I jam, she snap calls, turn 3, river, king, and I lose to king-jack offsuit in a spot where I was favored, but only about a 65% favorite. And you know me, I prefer to get it up to 80 if I can. Didn't do it here. At least I lost it to such a nice player, and obviously a player who's great for the game, but really stung, as it looked like this was going to be a night where I had a great evening at the poker table. Instead, I book a big-time loss. All right, cashing out. Yesterday, I think I booked a $660 or so loss. Today, it's a $1,358 loss, but that's okay. I'm going to toss to some viewer comments now that I recorded earlier today. All right, every now and again on this vlog, we'd like to hear from you, the viewer. And this might have been partially brought on by just how much I loved that comment last week when I was told that out of all the vloggers out there, I'm the guy that he trusts when it comes to titles. And that really meant a lot to me, which I said last week. But if you ever want to get a question in, you can always do that, and we'll do these occasionally, I don't know, maybe every 10 vlogs or so, because sometimes I just find it more fun to actually talk about some of these than just, type in comments in the comment section. Runner Guy writes in and says, I notice you often size down on your bets. Usually half pot or less when others would size up. Why so? I think this goes back to the old school days of me listening to the Crush Life Poker podcast and watching the videos and seeing that often done. It also is just a byproduct of me wanting to get paid off by a wider percentage of my opponent's range and just overall tendencies of a lot of the opponents that I play with in particular to not pay off larger bets on the river. Now, should that mean that I should probably bluff more in spots? Yes, it does. But I don't always do that because I don't always need to do that. I feel like a value-oriented style has worked out for me well over the years. Trying to work in thin value bets as much as possible has kind of been my bread and butter. So I've generally stuck with that. Tony writes in, how do you run so good, Ben? Is there a bankroll challenge like Boski? Yeah, Jeff Boski's Bank Rolex challenge is pretty cool. Trying to win enough money in cash games, he's going to buy a Rolex. The coolest part about it is the 24 intro. But no, I've never done a bankroll challenge. My bankroll challenge works like this. I play as many hours of poker as I can possibly play in a week, every week, given my schedule, and I win as much money during those hours as I can. In a perfect world, I'd get to 20 hours a week. I usually fall just short. Vito writes in, have you ever thought about walking away from your job to pursue poker full time? Well, yes, I have thought about it, but I think the more interesting thing to mention here is this. Back in 2015, January, I was without a job. I'd been laid off from my radio career, which I'd spent 9 years working at, and I made the last ratings period that I was ever a part of the highest in the history of the station, and they responded by laying me off. I'm not making this up. Turned out to be one of the best things that ever happened to me because of how well my TV career has worked out. And that's the point, is I thought about it then. I knew that I could support myself playing poker full time, but I just didn't feel that that was necessarily the best decision to make. And looking back on it, even if I were to quit my television job today, I could not be happier that I spent these last 7 years in television. I've learned so much. I got to experience so many great things, unforgettable memories. I've met some amazing people. And none of these things would apply if I just grinded poker full time. Now, would I have more money? Maybe, because the local TV doesn't pay much. But I am extremely happy with the decision I made there. And I don't know, in the future, could I pursue poker full time? Maybe, but I like what I'm doing now with anchoring the weekend shows. So I'm going to stick with that for the time being. This isn't a question, but it's a comment. And if there's ever something that illustrates why I have had success at poker over the years, this is it. PK $1 writes in, whenever I'm running bad and thinking about taking a break from poker, I watch one of your vlogs and drag my ass back to the casino. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I've talked about before, is that, as I mentioned a minute ago, I generally only play 20 hours a week. But since I started playing poker back in 2008, that year probably doesn't count, I would say probably since 2010, with the exception, of course, of the pandemic, that I can recall, I don't think I've ever gone 2 weeks without playing. I may never have even gone an entire week. I can't say exactly, but that's just always been the way I do it. I book a win, I forget about it, I move on to the next one. I book a loss, I forget about it, I move on to the next one. It's just become part of my life. It's what I do. I grind. I generally win more than I lose, but sometimes you can still lose more than you win over a given period of time. So that's just kind of the grinder mentality that I've always had. And I've seen a lot of my opponents have kind of the opposite mentality in that. Meaning, I've seen a lot of guys who are decent poker players. Yes, some of them, sometimes they can be whales that fall into this category too. But I've seen a lot of guys who you'll see like every day for like a month. I mean, they're there every single day. I got this one guy right now. He's there drinking energy drinks every single day. And I don't know how he's doing, but man, he's playing a lot of hours, right? And sometimes guys like this, you won't see them for like 8 months and then you'll see him again. That's just never been me. Right? I've always been the guy that's going to play a couple of days a week, get my hours in, no matter what the results are. And I've always been kind of proud of that. And it's obviously worked out well enough for me to continue to want to do it that way. This one's also not a question, but a comment. J. Robin Stacks, everything you do at the poker table conveys information. Which I guarantee you, every single person watching this vlog has seen that damn Daniel Negreanu masterclass promo. Including how much you tip, he writes. Great vlog as always, keep up the good work. Yeah, believe it or not, that was actually the main reason why I wanted to mention that hand. And yes, I'm still pretty pissed off at myself for not folding in that hand last week. But that was the part of it that I found so interesting, is that sometimes when there are guys that you don't know, you look at things like this to try to figure out who they are. Do they play for a living and things like that? Now usually, obviously you can tell if a guy plays for a living by just playing with them for an hour, but in this case, it was kind of iffy. And the fact that he tipped $40 is what led me to believe that he didn't play for a living, and, well, I have that information, albeit a little bit too late. Mike B writes in, have you ever had any trouble from fellow players over vlogging? Trouble of any kind? No trouble. The thing that I have had is a lot of guys clearly trying to act like they don't watch when they clearly do. For example, a local pro over a year ago comes up to me and says, I watched my first Ben Deach poker vlog last week, which was total bullshit. He's obviously watched before. A year later, he comes up to me again. I watched my first Ben Deach poker vlog last week. No. Gary M writes in, I would like to know, do you keep tipping a dealer when they just take the chip and put it in their tray and don't say anything? Well, Gary, that's pretty easy to me. And this basically never happens at the Peppermill. Virtually all the dealers there are great. And they basically always thank you. But, oh yeah, if you are playing poker to try to make a profit, tipping will eat you alive over the long term, and you really have to watch that. And that's something that I didn't realize at first. I would overtip years ago, and my buddy Gary called me out on it. He said, you overtoke, using the old school term. So I've tried to kind of ease up on that when I can, with the exception of my absolute favorite dealers. And I mean, again, there are some players, and you guys probably know some of these guys. It's like they're good, but they're not quite that good. They play a little too tight. I guarantee you there are some guys that, because of tipping, they've gone from being a winning player to a losing player. All right, so always good to hear from you. If you have any other comments, you can submit them below, or you can go to Instagram. Follow me there at Ben Deach and submit them as well. Hey, by the way, Poker Bros, if you haven't played on there, you're probably one of the few by now. It seems like every good poker player that I know plays on Poker Bros. And the group that I represent is called High Society. There's a lot of other vloggers that play in there as well. The action is fantastic. If you haven't tried it, you got to give it a shot. It's phenomenal. The link is in the description below, and use my referral code as well. I do not predict you'll be disappointed by the action on there. Hit the like and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. It's great for the channel. Really appreciate the new subscribers that have come along in recent weeks. You've had a lot of those, and we'll see you back here next time.